2 weeks ago, that was all anyone could talk about. But now it's, hey, Modern Horizons is all over social media. People forgot Strixhaven exists. So I think the hype train is pretty much past there. So again, you've got a card that's got a pretty good outlook in EDH in general, and is going to see some renewed interest or additional interest with Chatterfang, so that's my angle here. Just the supply, I think, is going to work well in your favor. There's just not that many out there.
If we refer back to the Strixhaven Collector Booster Contents chart that Wizards provided in the Collecting Strixhaven article that came out on March 25th, of note, the slot within which you can find this card, because it cannot be found anywhere other than the Collector Boosters in the borderless alt art version, that slot is where the foil Mystical Archives are found. You can get a Japanese alt art variant Mystical Archive, rare or mythic. You can get an extended art foil, rare or mythic, or a borderless planeswalker or school leading dragon slash plot device. My point being, this is a busy slot. And that's why the inventory is particularly deep on these. It's also why these kind of started in the $25 to $30 range and never really dropped down into the $10 to $15 range, despite, not actually seeing any immediate constructed play. Normally you would expect, something like, I was buying Great Henges at $22 or something first few months after Eldraine came out, and they were a lot harder to find in those collector boosters. So I don't love this entry point around 40. It's possible that all the focus on Modern Horizons 2 will push some people to undercut pricing down to the $35 range, or you'll catch some late night auctions on eBay or something. But I don't think there's not enough of this getting opened anymore to really, drop you to that $25 entry point. I just don't think it's possible. So what you're looking at here is a slow, steady drain up into your target range. Like, this will be a $60 or $80 card one day down the road. I don't know if it's 6 months, 12 months, or 18, but these will drain out because it's a fancy looking dragon. It's going to go into a bunch of dragon decks. Again, we do have dragon decks coming. This particular dragon has abilities that are useful in non-dragon decks, and as you said, plays into the green-black tokens theme that seems to be resonating throughout both Strixhaven and Modern Horizons 2.
Yeah, this card and Scootswarm are definitely a slightly longer horizon for me. I don't think these are going to be immediate flips, but it's just trying to get ahead of the game a little bit. Instead of buying the last 4 copies, it's giving you some time to sock some away for down the road. Get a nice little mix there, so you're not trying. Not everything has to be a fire sale tomorrow.
Also worth looking at the black-white dragon, and I think that's probably the 2 top priorities out of the dragons, because as you said, Shadrick Silverquill is reported in, I think you said Witherbloom was almost 1,900 decks, 14% of all green-black, and Shadrick's is just about 1,250, 9% of black-white decks. So
it's not far behind.
Both pretty solid.
Yeah, the dragons themselves, probably deserve a whole once over, but this one caught my attention just because of Chatterfang.
So to finish off with cards to watch, we've got a Pro Trader selection that mirrors my Elite Spellbinder. I think you can go either way with these 2 cards, or get some of both. Nate Blyweiss, one of the Pro Traders, called out Sedgemoor Witch foil extended arts to go 14 or 15 or so to about mid-30s. Basically the same kind of call as Elite Spellbinder. They're found in the same slot in the Strixhaven Collector Boosters, foil extended art rares. It's popping up all over the place in Modern and Legacy, and it's an EDH card. It's kind of like a black Monastery Mentor that generates tokens that aren't quite as good as the Mentor tokens, but this thing has Ward 3 life. So if you target it, you have to pay 3 life. So there's some upside there versus Mentor. 7% of all black decks on EDH Rec since it was released. To me, Elite Spellbinder and Sedgemoor Witch are just kind of locks on a similar horizon.
Yeah, they both are Obviously, pretty powerful cards. Definitely meant for constructed. Both can do some work in EDH. Probably not like the most popular in that regard, but they're not going to be no shows entirely, like some competitive cards end up being. And the price point looks good. I know that the pro traders have talked about this before, but Foil extended our promos here. That the most premium version of these competitive grade cards is tempting. That's a good price point for cards of this nature. So I think this is a pretty solid pick.
And I would bet that both of these cards get at least 2 to 3 years before they catch a reprint.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think
I think Spellbinder has a chance to show up in Challenger decks as a non-foil next spring for standard play. Maybe Witch as well, but not foil extended arts.
No, I wouldn't expect to see them in promotional premium versions again immediately. You've probably got some time before that comes up. They're going to give these a little bit of room to breathe. I do think you will see them, but I don't think we're there. You've got probably 2 years at least for Spellbinder.
Also worth shouting out that several other pro traders had mentioned this card to me in private as potential picks for this submission process, or had just discussed it openly in the Pro Trader Discord over the weeks. And I think from the very first time I saw Sedgemoor Witch doing in the Chain of Smog combos in the Legacy deck list that were top baiting, I knew it was going to end up going to be a pick on the show. But somebody had to get the coupon for it, and this time it's Nate. So congrats to Nate. He gets a $25 gift certificate from Cool Stuff Inc., just one of the many benefits of being a pro trader.
Yeah, I was just say sometimes there's everyone's got their eye on the same card. It's just a matter of having the land on the right week to set it out loud.
Alrighty, so since last week, lots of news on the Modern Horizons 2 front. They've been hot and heavy on the spoilers lately, and we'll dive right in here. Probably one of the biggest reprints, because keep in mind there are no reprints for existing modern cards in Modern Horizons 2, other than Modern Horizon 1 cards showing up as old border foils and etched foils in the collector booster boxes. So you can't get any Modern Horizons 1 cards. They revealed Giver of Runes, Force of Negation, and Old Border. You can't get those in the set booster boxes or the regular booster boxes for Modern Horizons 2. But you can't find them non-foil anywhere. You only get foils of these Modern Horizon 1 cards. So if you're rushing out to sell your non-foil with the first slivers, please stop, because non-foils shouldn't be threatened as the cheapest versions of the cards involved. It's also not everything, from Modern Horizons 1 that's getting a reprint in the collector booster boxes here. There are 23 uncommons from MH1, 12 rares, and 5 mythics that are getting printed into Old Border foil, etc. in the CBs. So some of your stuff's not going to get hit anyway. Worth flagging that Urza seems very likely to be one of those 5 mythics, but hasn't been revealed yet. And Urza, Lord High Artificer foils were spiking recently, which leads you and I to believe that somebody probably has advance notice that Urza is not catching a reprint here. In which case his foils go through the roof.
There are so many cards. I was doing research for this, for Chatterfang and for a variety of other stuff. I was seeing all sorts of weird price movement that was like, this makes no sense unless you knew some of these cards were coming. So clearly there were individuals acting about a month to 2 months ago, sometimes more, that had foreknowledge of what was coming here.
And some of this stuff, we clocked. There was rumors roaming around on Reddit that revealed more or less what Gritz ended up being, the planeswalker that was an insect in another zone. That rumor was floating around for months. But there's also information that never crossed our desks that other people clearly had access to, that is the only way to explain people going after some of the early stuff. I mean, when there was hints of squirrels on the packaging a month ago, squirrel stuff started taking off, but some of the squirrel stuff was moving months ago as well. So it's got definitely has shades of the way that Modern Horizons 1 went down, where ninjas and snowlands and stuff were out there being discussed 4 or 5 months in advance.
Yeah, yeah. So out of our, are we looking at the spoilers here, or do you have more to say on the pack distribution and setup?
Well, that was a long-winded way of coming back around to mentioning that the only reprints in the set proper, are cards that have never been in Modern before. And probably the most important of those that we've seen is Cabal Coffers, a card that was only ever printed once in Torment and whose foils have been long since been quite pricey. And what they did here is they picked out some of the Mythics to get a showcase treatment that basically is full art and alt art. So there's the regular Cabal Coffers in the set, but then there's a borderless borderless, non-foil, and foil version of Cabal Coffers that you can find in the collector booster boxes that are the fanciest version. And it's got great art. I think they're going to do very well. They also moved this from rare to mythic. Or was Cabal Coffers an uncommon originally?
Yep, sure was.
Yeah, so now it's a mythic. And, that's not going to do the price any favors as you go out further down the road. Yeah, it was a Torment uncommon originally. So the borderless rares in Mythics, I think 19 of the Mythics out of the 20 in the set get the alt art borderless treatment. So there's no foil extended arts for the Mythics. Basically all the extended art foils in Modern Horizons 2 are rares, because the Mythics in question get their own borderless art treatment, similar to what they've been doing with Planeswalkers and the Dragon Lords from Strixhaven. So yeah, Coffers is a big deal because bringing it into Modern means you can play it alongside Urborg. There's not really a deck in the top 8 meta for Modern right now where Coffers seems to slot in, because we don't really have a mono black deck in the format. But this helps push you in that direction. I don't know if people are going to start trying to cast Obliterators or what have you. But at bare minimum, even if this doesn't make a real splash in Modern anytime soon, it's still a big deal premium version of this card to have available for EDH.
Yeah, people have been trying to make mono black, MBC, mono black control, work in Modern since before the format's inception, essentially. I don't think this is going to be what makes it. And I think the days of that being an archetype are kind of long gone. So I don't have high hopes of this breaking into Modern in any meaningful way. There's no doubt that it'll show up in a couple odds and ends, kind of weird combo decks, or some guy at your F&M who wears a lot of metal shirts is going to try and play it. But all of that's sort of irrelevant. It's definitely going to draw a lot of demand for EDH because it's the first Cabal Coffers reprint we've had. Probably a lot of players who didn't even know this card existed are going to go try and grab it now that they have access to it where they didn't before, and where they didn't know that it existed, essentially. So I think that's kind of the angle for Cabal Coffers here. And as we saw in segment 2 with the price movement in Urborg, it's going to put some renewed interest on that card as well.
Now, it is also worth flagging that they've revealed 2 other pretty powerful black cards. There's a demonic tutor variant called Profane Tutor. Sorcery, suspend 2, 1 and a black. Search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of free ways to, like off As Foretold, you just get to cast this in DT right away. So I definitely sold some As Foretold foils today.
Oh, yeah.
And those were on the move a ways back as well, because the rumor about suspend cards goes back several months and was pretty widespread. Mm. And then there was also this card Grief that was revealed. 2 and 2 black for a 3/2 menace elemental incarnation. But the most important part is if you evoke it, you exile black card from your hand, which basically puts it into play, its effect happens, and then it goes away right away. Like you sack it as part of the resolution. And the effect is, when it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it, that player discards that card. So now you can have 4 Grief, 4 Thoughtseize in a deck, and really go to town shredding hands.
Well, yeah, and what you left off here on Grief is the play where you and anyone who played back in the Lorwyn era or early EDH will know this one, where you evoke the creature, which is evoke, you put it into play, and then you also then have to sacrifice it. But with the sacrifice trigger on the stack, you flicker it. And now you get to keep it, and you get the ability again.
Right. So in some kind of black-white X deck, you could be ephemerate this thing on turn 1 twice.
Yes.
So basically shred their hand twice.
Which is absolutely disgusting. And
then you get to keep the card, right?
I'm pretty confident that is how that works. I would have to double check, but I do not see why it wouldn't. So
that's a yeah. 3/2 menace on turn 1 with 2 discard effects.
Yeah, with double exile a card from your opponent's hand effects. That's not bad.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a deck for it, but it seems pretty pushed. It does a lot of the things that it feels like competitive players want to be doing, so definitely worth keeping an eye on.
What was the other card you were just talking about before Grief? Because I had thoughts about that one too.
Profane Tutor.
Oh yeah, the thing about Profane Tutor in the As Foretold decks that's interesting is you As Foretold and then Profane Tutor, and then either go get an instant that costs like 1 so that you can cast it for free during your opponent's turn when you follow up by passing the turn, or you go and get your next free spell that you're setting up to cast the following turn to make sure you pull off like the 1-2 combo. So it gives that deck some potency there as well. I mean, you can even suspend this on turn 2 to go get the As Foretold that you'll need in a couple turns if you're running behind.
Well, and in games 2 and 3, you're going to get relevant sideboard cards.
Yep, that too. So there's some tech tools there for sure.
And we're talking multi-format staple here, because I don't know to what extent Profane Tutor will make a splash in Modern. Seems like at least in the As Foretold decks. But in EDH, this is a super staple. This is basically another relatively cheap demonic tutor. I mean, suspend for 2 turns is nothing in EDH.
Yeah, it's different because you can't just like draw this and start going off. 2 turns is not like an insignificant number of turns in EDH in the way that it is in like it's not as fast because you have to wait for everyone's stupid turns. And how dare they have turns? It's supposed to be all about you. But it will be good there, especially with demonic tutors at $50. Like this is a sort of fine option, right?
Well, there's also the EDH, the nature of the format. You have maximum number of cards available to you that can cast spells for free.
True.
So they're, whatever it is that's too slow or like janky to be trying to do with Profane Tutor in Modern, you're going to get a chance to do that in EDH. Literally any card that lets you cast spells for free that, is going to be potentially a thing to look at with Tutor. So, yeah, I think the card's pretty important. It's also got sick Richard Kane Ferguson art on it.
Yeah, it is cool art. We have, what else? Wonder popped up. A longtime favorite of EDH players. Not clear how much that'll actually manage to matter in Modern. Anger would have been a little more interesting, but that makes it a lot harder to design around. People were real jumpy about Void Mirror. This is essentially the new Null Rod or something to that effect, which is the 2-mana artifact that whenever a player casts a spell, if they didn't spend colored mana to cast it, you counter it. So this is an artifact that will then cause other artifacts to be countered mostly because they probably didn't spend colored mana to cast it. And also free spells. The Profane Tutor we were just talking about, also stuff like Force of Will, anything that you didn't spend a colored mana to cast, it hoses Cascade. There's a lot of this is one of those cards that you read it and you go, wow, this is artifact hate. And then you start to notice all of the this actually hits way more than I realized. It just didn't jump off the page at me. So this will probably be a pretty popular sideboard card in quite a few formats.
So of the 5 Modern Horizons 1 Mythics that are getting a reprint vis-a-vis old border treatment, etc., Sword of Truth and Justice was confirmed. The first Sliver was confirmed. And what else did they give us? I can't remember if they've revealed a 3rd reprint MH1 Mythic yet. Don't see it. But I would guess that you're probably looking at Seasoned Pyromancer or the white 3 casting cost creature as opposed to Sarah the Benevolent. I have doubts that they're going to do old border planeswalkers here. So I suspect Red and 6 and Sarah are safe.
Yeah, not that those are particularly important anyways.
Well, I mean,
Red and 6 is, but Sarah's not. Yeah, Sarah's not. I'm browsing these other cards here as we're talking about it to see what jumps out at me.
They showed off Dakon Shadow Slayer, which I thought was kind of a different card than I was expecting. It's white, blue, black, 0 loyalty. When it enters the battlefield, it enters with a number of loyalty counters equal to the number of lands you control. Strange to key an Esper card to number of lands in play. You expect that to require green mana. +1 surveils 2, -3 exiles target creature, and then -6 is you may put an artifact card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield.
Yeah, he's pretty powerful. It was definitely going to have something to do with lands on it based on the old design, which is kind of funny because it's not Esper these days.
Right.
The fact that you get to, if you can play this for 3 mana. He comes in with 6 loyalty counters, possibly, and then you flip a very expensive artifact into play. Could be pretty potent. It's going to be tricky to have 6 lands, but then also have like an artifact that's really good, right? If that makes sense.
Well, it's cute that this fits into both my Brea and Atraxa decks, because in Atraxa it's just an efficient planeswalker that in the late game is just scales really well. And in Brea, the -6 is going to do some stuff.
Yep. No shortage there. People were real excited about Rishadan Dockhand, but I don't think they realize that having that on a creature instead of a land is kind of important. So I'm not positive.
Yeah, that seems more cute than important. However, late this evening they did reveal a brand new blue merfolk god, Saivelun, god of sea and sky. 1 blue, legendary creature merfolk god. If you control 2 other merfolk, Saivelun, god of sea and sky, has indestructible. When she attacks, you draw a card, and other merfolk you control have ward 1, which means people have to pay 1 extra mana to target them, and it's a 3/4. It's got Seb McKinnon art. So not only are they clearly trying to push merfolk back into the spotlight for Modern, but they're doing it with arguably the best artist on the roster and with a very powerful looking Mythic. I would imagine that the alt art looks pretty good. So I would imagine alt arts of this card are going to be real pricey right out of the gate.
I don't remember if merfolk ever mattered in Modern. I'm having trouble remembering.
I mean, it's certainly top 8 at things in Modern as recently as 2 years ago.
Well, everything tops 8 something in Modern.
No, but I mean, like, had done so on more than just one occasion. Had done so sporadically over a fairly long period of time. And at a certain point, people just decided it was a tier 2.5 or 3 deck. Some people still play it. We haven't talked about it in top 8s for ages. But they are giving a bunch of... It looks like they are deliberately trying to push some of those lower tier decks back into the spotlight. Is that going to work across the board? No. Is it possible the Merfolk deck never gets anywhere despite this god? Sure. Is that going to stop the foil borderless version of this Mythic from being very expensive? No.
Yeah.
This card is going to be worth money.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's a Mythic, so the numbers are already in a good shape. I'm not convinced that it will be... I don't know if it will be meaningful or not competitively, and if it's not, I don't see it being terribly popular. Merfolk's not a huge casual tribe, and it's not really a big deal in EDH, so it kind of has to be good competitively to have a above baseline price tag.
And in competitive Magic, even if Merfolk plays it, they might only play 1 or 2 copies, right?
Right. So I actually like the premium versions of these might do okay for the Merfolk, for the Corbin Hostlers out there, but Actually, the more I think about it, the less I like this, unless this deck turns out to be just absurdly good. Some sort of new merfolk that uses like Rishodon and that type of thing.
So according to EDH Rec stats, though, Merfolk is the 17th most popular tribe. 2,100 decks logged on the site. And the top commanders are Kumena, Sig, Chulane, Tashana, and Kopala.
Okay.
And of course, Thrasios is a merfolk, not that it much matters.
Yeah, I sure, I believe people build it. I don't think that it's popular, basically.
All right, so take a look at this Boros card they coughed up. General Ferris Rockerick. And by the way, they just totally got drunk and wrote random names on a whiteboard. Like the naming in the set does leave something to be desired. I think there's like a Garth and a Rarth or something.
A Karth.
Yeah, Karth and Garth are both characters in this set.
You haven't even picked out the most ridiculous named creature yet.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. So anyway, the good general here is 1 red white for 3/1. Legendary creature human soldier. Hexproof from monocolored. You can't path it, you can't bolt it, you can't fatal push it. And whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a 4/4 red and white golem artifact creature token. This card is getting played in Bring to Light decks. It makes 4/4s every time they cast something.
Yeah, that doesn't seem terrible. It doesn't seem terrible as as a backup, because if every spell in your deck is multicolor, it's an alternate win condition, but also gets to play defense for a little while. I feel like they'd have to change the deck up to play 4 of them. But and if there's only one, it's a little less potent. But he's an interesting card nonetheless. Again, we're talking about evaluating these, and we know that at the moment EDH is such the driver of prices, so it's hard to look at these in a different manner. Like I'm evaluating everything through that lens, right? Like how popular this will be in EDH, and if it's not, I'm real lukewarm on it, essentially, at least at this point in time.
I would guess he's a top 8 commander from Modern Horizons 2, but that's not saying a lot, because there's going to be a lot of cool options.
Yeah, really, you're playing a Boros commander that makes 4/4s. I don't know about that.
Oh, I think you can do it, because his hexproof from monocolored is even more useful against 3 people than it is against 1.
It's particularly good against protection for hexproof from monocolor is just Wraths.
Yeah, but you're playing Teferi's Protection and variants thereof, Ephemerates, etc., so that you can... I guess Ephemerate doesn't work, but Teferi's Protection and other stuff in white that lets you get all your stuff back. The people will build this commander for sure.
People build everything, but I don't think it's going to be popular.
Okay. They also coughed up Ignoble Hierarch tonight, just before we started recording.
Yeah.
This is Noble Hierarch, but in Jund colors. Pretty much everything else the same. Costs 1 green, 0/1, Exalted. Makes taps for Jund colors. So now you can run 4 Noble Hierarch, 4 Ignoble Hierarch if you want to be doing that. Or you can just throw this into an Infect deck. I think Tom Ross coughed up a Twitter post pretty much immediately showing this off alongside Phyrexian Crusader, suggesting that could be a thing.
This card is real big deal. I saw Liz tweeting constantly about Ignoble Hierarch all of a sudden. And I'm like, what is this card? And then I looked at it. I'm like, is this card exactly what it sounds like? Yes, it is. It's a goblin too, kind of, on the down low. But the Jund Noble Hierarch is going to see a lot of play. Noble Hierarch is very popular, has been since it was printed, and I don't expect this to be any different.
So, some folks in the Discord said that they didn't think this is what Jund needs and might not run it. It's also true that Noble Hierarch was a much bigger deal 3 years ago than it is today in the format. So I'm not sure if this is a $2 rare out 3 months or it's a $10 to $15 rare, but I will certainly be watching for it to pop up in lists.
I'm not saying that this is going to do what Jund needs it to do. I just think the card's going to be good all over the place. I mean, if you think of the way Noble Hierarch is played, it's very frequently... sometimes it's in the decks, I'm going to play a small deck of creatures that beat people up and blah, 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 but, it does a lot of work. And I think that this will probably be in the same space as, like, if you're playing a deck that plays green and one other color, you might want to consider Noble Hierarch. Like, you're in that space. I didn't even get a chance to look at all these new cards that were spoiled today. I've been so busy.
So one of the other cards that's new to Modern, but not new, is Quirion Ranger, a typical 4 of in Legacy Elves, which puts Modern Elves back on the menu in a build that's more reminiscent of the Legacy build. That's a pretty big deal. And the F&M, I think the F&M foils were a huge target right away. People running all over the place trying to scoop them up.
Quirion Ranger F&M foils have been $150 for a while. And I had one listed, because I had sold one at like 120 or 130, like, I don't know, a couple months ago, and relisted my next one at 190, knowing that I wasn't the lowest price. And then I looked over and saw the Quirion Ranger spoiler on my right monitor, and just looked over to my left monitor that had my TCG inventory and changed the price from 200 to 300. Like, we're bumping that up $100 because people will want this. And lo and behold, I think it took 2 hours and somebody bought it.
Crazy.
And like, I'm like, okay, I will go pay $200 for more copies of this. I can find it. I could not find one. I found 2 in Europe that I let the pro traders take. But yeah, I couldn't even find an overpriced copy.
Yeah, so that's a relatively big deal in common. Top of the list for possibly most broken card in the set so far, Gaia's Will.
Yeah.
A throwback to Yogg Will, one of the more broken sorceries of all time. This is a green suspend card, but that you can cast for free off As Foretold, etc., etc. Until end of turn, you may play lands and cast spells from your graveyard. If a card would be put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, exile that card instead. So this is shades of Yogg Will, shades of Underworld Breach. It only lets you fool around with lands. No, that's not true. Play lands and cast spells. I thought at first blush this was lands and creatures. How is green allowed to just cast whatever spells they want out of the yard?
Yeah, this is literally Yawgmoth's Will, just green suspend instead. But it is the rules text otherwise is the same.
This is a busted ass looking card.
I mean, it's Yawgmoth's Will. Yawgmoth's Will is the perfect card for people who don't know a lot about Magic to look at and go, I don't get it.
And if I had to guess which card out of Suspend leaks had people running after As Foretold a couple months ago, it's this one. of all, it's not the Prothean Tutor, it's the Gaia's Will.
Well, yeah. Probably. It's definitely a silly card. Suspend 4 is a lot. It is a lot.
But you're not looking to play this fairly. Like, everybody that's playing this is going to be... In EDH, you'll play it fairly, and I think that's what's going to make it a multi-format staple. Is that, again, in EDH, you can still have a bunch of different ways to cheat it, but even if you are, in fact, suspending it on turn 1, it's going to be good, because by the time you get to turn 4, some stuff's happened, and you want to play some fetch lands out of your yard, you want to get some stuff that they've killed with point removal, etc., etc. And then in Modern, you're just going to cheat this. Like, you're just going to cast Electro Dominance or As Foretold or whatever.
Yeah, in EDH, you probably want to play this like in the mid-late game, because then, you know, if you're on like turn 8 or 9, you play this after everyone's kind of burned through some stuff, and that sets you up getting into the late game. They have a big explosive turn with some real ammo in the chamber. But yeah, I would agree. I could see some decks playing this fairly in Modern, like just trying to spend it on turn 1 every turn, and then setting up to go bananas on turn 4. But also, I think you're right, like any of those spells that cast stuff for free, so Electro Dominances and things of that nature, I don't think it's As Foretold. I think it's, like you said, those spells that let you cast stuff for free, and I'd have to double back to see what all the options are, because there's a bunch now that weren't there before. I frankly don't remember them all, which is a shame on me, because I am that player. I should know all these, and I don't. But I think that's probably where these are going to go, and off the top of my head, that would be the target to work with Gaia's Will.
Can you cast suspend cards off Bring to Light?
It's a good question. Let I have to check the rules text, and which is probably a little long. Yes. Cast a card with converted mana less than or equal, and I believe that counts because that's basically how Cascade works. You can cast a card till you reveal that costs less. Yeah, so cards with no mana. Well, I don't know. Probably. I'm gonna go with probably. I used to be able to name all this stuff right off the top of my head, but it's been so long since I've like played with it enough to be able to confidently speak to these.
Yeah, I'm finding like deck lists that had Bring to Light and Ancestral Visions and Hypergenesis and Wheel of Fate and a bunch of nonsense. So I think you can.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
But I mean, regardless, whether or not BTL does it, enough cards do it. The guys will look super nasty. It's a rare foil extended arts, whatever they get down to, and I would probably benchmark them against Underworld Breach, and also be aware that this could be a card that gets banned. Like there was a window where you could make a lot of money on Hogak, but you needed to get in and out in a hurry because it was that busted. And Gaia's Will is probably at the top of the heap. Now, one of the other cards that's really going to enable some creature-based combos is Imperial Recruiter, which I think we just got in Double Masters, if I'm not mistaken, is being reprinted again this year, but into Modern this time. And there is cool foil borderless art, which also comes in foil, available in the CBs, where it shows the Recruiter with Kiki Jiki in the shadows behind him on the left and a Pestermite over his shoulder on the right. So yeah, now you can go search up creature cards with power 2 or less in Modern and put them in your hand. And I'm sure somebody's going to make that work.
Yeah, it's, I mean, Imperial Recruiter was a big deal in, it wasn't Double Masters, in Legacy because you had Allurin. But he was a lot more fair without that.
Sure.
So I'm actually like I know they put Kiki Jiki and Pestermite in the background, and he will work for that because he'll find the other half, right? He'll probably run one Kiki Jiki, maybe two, and he'll go find it. I don't know. I actually don't know if this is as wild as it seems like it might be, because without Allurin, that was really what set this card off, because you could play Imperial Recruiter for free, then tutor for a combo piece that you could then instantly play for free. So it had a lot of power to it.
Well, folks were pretty much immediately honing in on the fact that the Saheeli Rai combo decks with Felidar Guardian get to use this to pull up the cat.
Yeah, which is fine. You know, then you play it as a 2-of, right? It's like the 5th and 6th copy of Felidar Guardian. So fine, but like not staggering. It's just a little bit of consistency. You know what card that showed up that is actually, I mean, we've actually missed some of the more obvious ones from today that really warrant conversation. I guess the first one is these artifact lands.
Yeah.
So
artifact allied duels. They come into play tapped, but they're indestructible. Interesting. I'm curious whether Amulet Titan will end up running any of these.
I don't know why they'd want them.
They'd be coming to play on taps duels that are indestructible.
I don't think that they care. That doesn't seem meaningful. The indestructible component doesn't matter as far as they're concerned. I mean, these were not legal in Modern because of strategies, Affinity, which would like sacrifice them and use them essentially for food for their creatures. And these coming into play tapped is kind of part of the way to slow that down. I don't know if these are good enough. I think these are from a different era.
Well, these are brand new lands. They've never existed before.
I mean, the importance of artifact lands feels like it might be from a different era.
I think artifact decks and EDH are going to run these from here to eternity.
Yeah, I mean, they are free artifacts, which is relevant. I have not played an artifact-based deck in a while. The need to have extra artifacts in play in EDH is questionable because I feel like you could just like play stuff that makes a lot of tokens.
Well, it's really nice. It's really nice. It's really nice because you were talking about the infestation card or whatever earlier that can blow up a bunch of artifacts and enchantments. And one of the things about making your lands artifacts in the EDH is that if they're not indestructible, they're going to catch incidental artifact enchantment board wipes and so forth. But them being indestructible means there's really no downside other than them coming into play tapped. And people play plenty of come into play tap lands in EDH. They don't have basic land types, so you can't search them up or anything. So they're definitely like mediocre to medium in the format compared to all of your other options. But I suspect the artifact decks will still find room for them. I think I would run the 3 that are relevant in Brea. I'd find room.
I can definitely see some people playing these. I'm not saying they won't see any play. I don't see them being significant. Like they're not game changers in any way, shape, or form. I think that they're just kind of also rans. In Modern is the question here for me, and maybe like Pioneer or whatever the other format there is. And I'm on the fence. I kind of have a gut feeling that they're not that big of a deal in the format, but again, I could very much be wrong on this, and I'm going to be looking to the competitive players and getting their sense of how important these are.
The other thing is that they tie into the modular theme that's going on here, which seems mostly limited focused, but might revive that version of Affinity in Modern if they give us enough pieces here. And they've already revealed some pretty cool stuff. They showed us Zabaz, the Glimmer Wasp, which is a 1-mana 1/1 with modular 1. And if a modular triggered ability would put one or more +1/+1 counters on a creature you control, you put an extra counter on it. So if you've got a Hardened Scales out and this thing, and one of your modular creatures dies, then you could be putting 3 creature counters onto an Arcbound Ravager. And that Ravager can eat artifact lands to get +1/+1 counters on it, and then Zabaz is going to give it a +2/+2. So that's all at least worth clocking as, is this going to get there, or is it just going to be, for funsies? But they gave us other pieces. There's Arcbound Shikari that was revealed, 1 red-white, as a 2/2 first strike modular with modular 2. And when it enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each other artifact creature you control. This also explains why people were going after Inkmoth Nexus recently, right?
It's certainly